Hi, I'm Derek Briggs, Product Manager for Tsugami REM Sales. Today I'll be explaining the G150 code in your Tsugami part programs, what this code does, and why it's so important. In every part program in a Tsugami Swiss machine, after the G300 line, which I explained in a different video, is a G150 line. That G150 is what's going to establish your new Z0 position for the next part you're about to make. Because the G300, we open the collet and retract and move the main spindle without moving the actual material, we lose our Z coordinate position. This G150 is going to reestablish the new coordinate position for Z0 on the next part. And in this video, I'll explain to you how that Z value is actually calculated to find your new Z0 position. This is my rudimentary, non-artistic drawing of how a G150 works. So imagine this being your Tsugami machine. And this would be your guide bushing. And guide bushing, this is going to be for a right-hand cutoff and a left-hand cutoff. There is a difference in how you calculate your G150 Z value based on this condition, right-hand or left-hand cutoff tool. So first I'm going to start with the right-hand cutoff tool. This is the easiest way to calculate it if you had a right-hand tool. However, a left-hand, very simple as well. It's very important to get this G150 number correct because this is going to dictate your facing value and that your face is actually the same as your gang slide Z0 face, the turning tool. So you can see this arrow here is saying turn tool and material face with a right-hand cutoff. So this position may differ from machine model to machine model. So you may have this distance in here could be, depending on your machine, either 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters. On the very biggest machine, it can be up to 4 millimeters, but typically we're right here in this range, 2 millimeters or 3 millimeters, depending on whether your machine is a 12 millimeter, a 20 millimeter, a 32, or 38. So this distance is irrelevant as long as your turning tool face is always going to be the same no matter what. So the distance from your guide bushing face to this face of this material is always going to be the same because your facing tool is going to be a regular 55 or 80 degree turning tool, and that's what's going to establish your Z0. Every other tool is based off of that. Okay, so that's why this G150 is so important. So now every machine may be slightly different. Is it exactly 2 millimeters? Maybe not. It could be 2.05, 2.1, 2.15. So it does change a little bit from machine to machine, but very minimal. But it's still important to know that it could be different and it's not out of the ordinary for it to be slightly different. So for example, if I wanted to calculate how much I want to face off my next part, for ease of mathematics and everything, we're going to say 10 thousandths is how much we want to face off. So we're just going to write that down, 10 thousandths of facing value, okay? So right now, I'm sitting right here at Z0. My Z1 axis is sitting right here. Now in the G300, to start the next part, I open my collet and I actually retract my Z1 axis to grab more material for the next part. Well, I'm moving Z, which means my absolute position changed. But I didn't move my material. It stayed put right here because the bar feed is keeping that material pushed up against the cutoff tool. So what happens then? I lose my Z0 position. I need to reestablish that Z0. So when I retract my Z1, I clamp, I'm at a random value in Z right now, but my material is still at a known distance. So what I want to do is I say G150 Z, okay, minus 10 thousandths. So basically what I'm doing, this G150 move doesn't move anything. All you're doing is telling where is the face of my material right now. And we're telling it that it's at 10 thousandths negative direction. So is it actually there? No, it's not. It's actually at 0. But since we told it it's now there, our next move to go face off is we're going to say, let's go to Z0. Where's the material going to move when we tell it to go to Z0? Since we told it right now it's sitting at negative 10. It's going to move forward in the positive direction 10 thousandths, which is going to leave us that little bit of material out here to face off with our turning tool. Our turning tool is going to come in and we're going to wipe this material right out at 10 thousandths. Now we have a nice flat Z0 face to start machining our next part. What a lot of people run into is if this facing value is not facing properly, if you don't have this calculated correct, you're not facing off enough material, typically what happens is this ends up being short, you don't face anything off, and all your dimensions become short. Well, what some people try to do is offset each individual tool by the amount that it's off. Let's say it's off by 5 thousandths. So when you said G150, Z minus 10, you go to Z0, and you're still sitting 5 thousandths away from this turning tool here. Well, you don't face off that 5 thousandths, your part becomes short, and then you want to start offsetting tools. You offset your facing tool, 5 thousandths. Well, now you have to offset your cross drilling tool, 5 thousandths, your grooving tool, 5 thousandths, your cutoff tool, 5 thousandths. You're chasing all of your offsets to match what was wrong in the beginning by this right here. So if your first thing, if your part comes out short, always check the face, the surface of the face. Usually you can tell, but just by looking at the surface finish on the face, if it was faced off with a turning tool or if that was the cutoff tool that last touched that face of that material. If you can't tell by that, go ahead and do a face off and stop right in the middle. Reset your program, open your door, and see if you're actually cutting any material off. If you're not, what you would do is you would make this number larger. So let's make it then G150 Z minus 20 thousandths. Now I'm gonna feed out 20 thousandths past this point. Now usually what happens when you have to start going to extreme values to face off, say you had to face off 10 thousandths, but you had to tell it was at 20. Usually what happens is your cutoff tool, sometimes your bar feed pressure can be a little too high, and when you open up that collet, your cutoff tool will actually flex because the bar feed is pushing pressure up against that cutoff tool. If you have a very thin tool, what you can do with a right hand cutoff, you have the luxury, if you're getting that deflection, and that's what's causing this number to be incorrect, what you can do is you can actually feed past all the way across center, way over here. We can feed way over here. So we're using the side of the tool holder itself for rigidity for the bar feed, or you can try to back your bar feed pressure down. Sometimes that will actually cause more problems when you get into the bigger bars and it's not pushing hard enough to keep that big bar there when you do your regrip. So I like to park my my cutoff tool way across center, all the way to the other side of the bar. So we're using as much of this cutoff tool holder as our stop as possible. So that's right hand cutoff. Very easy. However much you want to face off, it is a negative value here because we're not moving it minus 10, we're telling it it's already sitting at minus 10. And we're going to say go to Z0, it's going to feed out that 10 thousandths, we're going to face that off. The left hand has a little bit more math involved, but equally simple. So a left hand cutoff, this face right here is your turning tool face. So if I was to draw a gang slide with a turning tool right here, like this, let's call this an 80-degree turning tool, okay? Here's my insert. That is going to be in line with this face right here. However, my cutoff tool is not, it's away. And typically we're using left-hand cutoff tools because we need to get our sub-collet way close up here, all the way up against the side and swallow as much of that part as possible. So with a left-hand cutoff tool, if I wanted to face off 10 thousandths, we have to look at two different things. Well, three different things really. What is the width of my holder? 625. I'm using a 32 millimeter machine as an example. We use 5/8 shank tools on our Tsugami machines. If you have, say you have a 20 millimeter machine, this would be 1/2 inch. The math is always the same, the equation is always the same. You might just get a different number based on how wide this tool is. So what we need to know is, here's my material face at the end of my part, okay? But when I want to face off, I don't want to face this whole chunk off of here. I need to back that up and only face off the value that I want off the very front of this. So what I would do is, if we're using 625, we're going to take 625, okay, minus the width of our cutoff insert, which in this case I use 118 or 3 millimeter as an example. So minus 118 minus our facing amount. we'll call it 10 thousandths again. So minus 10 thousandths. Okay, so this is all an inch. So we're gonna take 625 minus 118, which gives us 507. Minus another 10 gives us 497. So we're gonna tell this, where is my Z1 sitting right now? After I opened my collet, retracted my main spindle, and clamped my collet again, where is this face? What do we want to call that? We would want to call this G150 Z.497. That means we're sticking out a positive 497 right now. So now when I say, let's go to Z0, it's gonna back up in the negative direction, 497 thousandths, leaving 10 thousandths sticking out for the turning tool to face off. Let's say, for example, that we use ½ inch. Let's use the same thing. Let's do ½ inch minus, let's call it a 2 millimeter wide insert. You're gonna be at 0.78 minus 10 thousandths, okay? So that's gonna leave you with 422 minus 10, it'd be 412. 412. So same thing, G150 Z.412, and then go to Z0. It's gonna back up 412, and you're gonna face off the 10 thousandths extra that you told it, the 10 thousandths less you told it was sticking out. So in this scenario, when you say G150 Z minus 10, go to Z0, it's gonna feed forward. In this scenario, G150 Z positive number, when you say go to Z0, it's gonna retract, leaving the correct amount in front of your actual Z0 face here to face off. That's how your G150 works. Thank you very much.